Genealogy is sort of the smallest form of your history. You're going to find you have ancestors who did great things, ancestors who did horrible things, and a lot of ancestors who led very sort of ordinary lives, and it's a great way to kind of connect with different historical events. Hello, my name is Christopher Child. I am the Secretary and Membership Chairman of the Society of the Cincinnati in the state of New Hampshire. I've been doing genealogical research since I was about 10 years old. There were earlier members of my family who had an interest. I had a grandmother and 3 siblings of my grandparents who had an interest. I began going to the place that I work when I was 12 years old and started working there when I was 16. So it was certainly a passion. When I joined the society in 2005, I helped a few people find qualifying ways to join the society, and that was really the first way I came in contact with what the society was about. There were a few colleagues who were already members, and I got to kind of know the membership process, how one is able to join and qualify for membership, and that can vary by state society. And so over the years, through my own genealogical research and researching other people's family histories, I've gotten to find qualifying lines for a lot of people to join, frequently in the New Hampshire Society, but in many other state societies as well. So in terms of membership to the New Hampshire Society, for the most part, male applicants of eligible officers who are related are eligible to apply. And for the most part, the Society of the Cincinnati in general has sort of a 1 member per officer rule. And this kind of varies from state society to state society. For the most part, all of the 14 state societies allow 1 hereditary member and 1 successor member. And usually that is the person's oldest son, younger brother, or nephew, or grandson. The New Hampshire Society and a few other state societies also allow 1 additional life membership, which can be a sort of a second son, a younger brother, or a cousin. So at the most, membership can be limited to 3 members per an officer in terms of hereditary, successor, and life membership. In terms of how one has to be related to those officers, New Hampshire allows for descents of the officer, their siblings, or their cousins, and that also varies from state society to state society. There are some state societies that only allow descents of the officer or their sibling, and in some cases that ends up limiting membership possibility. So, for example, we have 1 member in New Hampshire who represents a Massachusetts officer who was an original member of the Massachusetts Society, but he died without children, and the membership was passed to his brother, who also died without children, and they had 2 sisters who also had no children. So there are no descendants of that member and his siblings. So the closest relative is descendants of his first cousins. And in that case, and in some other cases, what often happens is if there is no candidate who has applied to join based on the rules of that state society, the Massachusetts Society has often loaned members to the New Hampshire Society. So someone who is related to that officer but doesn't fit that membership criteria can enjoy the privileges of membership in the New Hampshire Society. So there's some of these little quirks that you kind of learn over the years with how membership can work between the 2 state societies, and all the various membership chairmans, we're all often in touch with each other so that we're all kind of on the same page. In terms of the challenges of an application, when we are researching officers who have never been represented, probably one of the things is dealing with the surviving records of the time and to make sure that we have the right person. And this more comes in context with people with very common names. And it's like, how do you know that this John Smith was the lieutenant in this particular regiment? Sometimes you have pensions later on where the veteran really describes their service in the war, but sometimes you don't. So that can be some of the challenges. In the early 19th century, there were some hurdles in just the way that records were kept. There can be sort of gaps in records, and particularly if an officer's descendants moved west, you can have record issues with some of the western states and how those are arranged or non-existent. But you deal with what you've got, and there's errors all over the place, but the ability to correct past errors is probably at its best today than it has been before. We have access to a lot more information, a lot more indexed information. So there are certainly hurdles, but a lot of ways today to remedy those issues. So in terms of the genealogical application, the applicant fills out the application back to the officer for every generation, and provides documentation for each generation. And the membership committee will review the application, and if there are any issues that arise from the documentation presented, then we would discuss that with the applicant. They're also able to use the past applications if their father or grandfather had been members as well, and if there is documentation in those applications. To me, a lot of genealogical research, and this isn't so much related to the mission of the society or what have you, but a lot of the research that I do just on a day-to-day basis is very much what I would say a puzzle. So it's a little just that kind of aspect of how I do genealogical research. So when I have researched someone and I find some certain genealogical information, sometimes it doesn't lead anywhere, and sometimes I might have researched someone 5 or 6 years ago and provided my notes that are I keep them in a shared Excel file that some of my colleagues have as well, and then later on there's someone who's expressing interest in joining the society, and we look at their genealogical information and we realize some of the notes we had made a few years ago will come into play to help establish a line for someone to join today. So it's great that sometimes you do something years back that didn't really pan out with anything at that point, but it might come into play a few years later.